Hello and welcome to the Cardiff Met Sports Coaching Hub podcast.
I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Mike Castle.
We're here to bring you insights around all of the latest cutting-edge research within coach education and practice.
You can stay up to date with all of our latest episodes through the links in the podcast description below.
We hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cardiff Met Sports Coaching Hub podcast. Joined today by Dr Kerry Harris and Sofia Santos and Lisa Newton. Lisa, first time on the podcast, welcome. Why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about your coaching journey. Where did coaching start for you? And how have you ended up in your current coaching role?
Yeah, so I was a rugby player a long time ago and ended up retiring quite early, just through injury. So I've had a few knee reconstructions, but concussions sort of made me take it a little bit more seriously. And I guess as I was coming to the end of my playing career, I started to think being part of rugby is a huge part of my identity. And it was reasons about ways I could still stay involved in that team environment and still be who I am, but without maybe putting my body at risk every day. I moved into coaching relatively young. I did a sports coaching degree here at Cardiff Met, and when I graduated, I went out to Canada, which was supposed to be at a end of uni, 3 or 4 months traveling, and then I just didn't come back. So I spent between 4 and 5 years out there, which I absolutely loved. But it was while I was out there, I was given, I guess because of my accent and coming from Wales, it was a bit like, oh, you must know a bit about rugby, coming into this environment. And I got a few opportunities that way. So ended up doing some university stuff out there and some provincial stuff. And then when I came back here, sort of was I really like this. So I was working construction as my day job, if you like, at the time. Came back here, continued with construction, but got straight into volunteering at the club that I played for. And yeah, I just loved it. I loved still being in the environment and being able to pass on my knowledge and those type of things. So yeah.
And what's your current role in coaching at the university?
So I'm the head coach of the women's rugby program.
Okay, how's that been?
Yeah, it's good. So I guess at some point, my volunteering hours paid off, and I got the opportunity to become sort of employed as a rugby coach, which at that point in my sort of career, I didn't think was ever going to happen. So yeah, I came back, volunteered at my local club, Pontyclean, and then I actually bumped into one of the girls in the SU office and said, "Listen, I want to coach. I want to coach the Archers. I want to come back to Uwick." And she laughed and joked about it, and we did. And we went back and forth for a little bit, and then an opportunity happened. So I came in part-time under the SU and did that pre-COVID, so 2019, before that weird time in life. And then after COVID, they decided to make the role a full-time role, and they offered it to me. So that was huge. It felt like a lot of stuff that I'd, all the sort of sacrifices you make to be a volunteer sort of paid off at that point. And that was good. So yeah, full time here now since I think 2 years. And to be fair to Met Sport, I was pregnant when they offered me the role as well. So it was one of those we have no idea what maternity will look like, but whatever. But they wanted to support me through it, which was great. So yeah, I was grateful for that.
Is there anything about university rugby that you liked so much that was sort of where you wanted to go? Was it because of the potential career option there versus what it's like at other clubs, or just university rugby always been a passion for you?
I think my experience here as a player and as a captain as well was a really positive one. And back at that point in the sort of of women's rugby, if you wanted to play performance, you needed to go to university. And I'll be honest, I didn't come to university to study, which, do you know what I mean? I feel like was probably a common theme at that point in time as well, and maybe even still for some sports. But that was a step on the sort of pathway to playing international rugby for me. So I think my third year, whatever, that's when I went up and actually got my first cap. So having or knowing that was a real route into sort of I wouldn't say professional rugby because it wasn't professional, but to be in performance, and I think that I've got a lot of knowledge to share when it comes to rugby. So I wanted to be part of that, and not necessarily I don't know if I've still got ambitions to coach Wales or that, but I really like where I am on the pathway, and I think that being able to prepare players to go into that the next environment and this not be the end point for them. It's important to me.
Amazing. Great. And Sofia and Kerry, welcome back to both of you. Quick reintroductions for the fans.
Yeah, Kerry Harris. I'm a senior lecturer here at Cardiff Met, previously the women's football director for around 20 odd years. I guess I'm Sofia's sidekick in terms of the the research and the innovation stuff that we're doing at the moment. And yeah, it's good to be back.
Definitely not my side. She's running the show. Thank you for having us back. Sofia Santos. I'm a senior lecturer in sports coaching here at Cardiff Met. I'm the program director for the master's degree in sports coaching. And as Kerry said, we're trying to develop the knowledge that we already, it's already out there, but also advancing the knowledge we've got around women in sports coaching, but particularly, I think, with a focus on coach education and how coach education might impact on those experiences.
Super. And this, for me, it was always going to be a really interesting episode. When Manuel reached out to Ollie and I to ask who wants to host it, I was like, me, please. Because all the way back in season 1, we had Katrina on and we were talking about the very same program that we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about now. So I think today is a really interesting follow-up to see the sort of the distance traveled, to see the work that's come out of it as well. So we're obviously going to share some of Lisa's experience and some of your both as well in delivering the program. I'll also talk a little bit about a paper that's been recently published. So yeah, lots to sort of discuss over the next sort of hour or so. Why don't we start with a bit of context on where we're at with the program then? Because when we had Katrina on, I think we were maybe 6 to 12 months sort of into the program. It was maybe halfway through, and I guess we're
I don't
done,
think we
almost
were
done now,
halfway through yet at that point. But now we're right at the end of the program as we know it. To be fair to the WRU, even though we did expect this, we initially planned for this to be a 2-year program, we've had discussions around how this is about cultural change and not a quick fix of how we sort women in coaching. And therefore, it has been agreed that we are going to continue this partnership with the WRU. Amazing. So the program might not look exactly as it is, but the values, the foundations of it, the aims and objectives are certainly around the same ones as then. But for context, we've been running this program with a group of coaches in which obviously Katrina is part of, but Lisa's also part of it. And she's been on this journey with us that has been hopefully as much learning for Lisa as it has been for us. We've learned a lot along the way. So it's been 2 years now. It's been 2 years of us working together, and that's where we're at with us, time-wise.
And I guess that's, again, reiterating some of the messages from season 1. It was important to call this a program rather than just a course or something that someone can go on. It was about that longer term change, and we'll dig into some of Lisa's experiences about how that's manifested itself. So before we get into some of the nitty gritty and the work that's come behind the program, what was it about the program that enticed you onto it, Lisa? What was it about the sort of the advert that went out and you deciding that's for me? I think I should put my name in the hat for that one. I
think the title of it helped because I wanted to be in a high performance space, or at least get that knowledge to be able to share then with the where I'm at with my coaching. I don't think that there was much or probably wasn't, because it was women in high performance coaching. I think a lot of us assumed it was a coaching course, so moving away from the program bit. So it was I want to do that. That's me. I'm the target demographic for this. Signed up that way without really knowing what to expect. I guess I just expected more of the same courses that I'd already been on, but it's not that at all. It's very different.
Good, awesome. So before we get to that program being designed, sort of put into practice, I guess sold to the WRU as this great thing that they should be doing, there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So rewind sort of 2, 3, possibly even 4 years now. There's some discussion, some work going on between the both of you and others at the university, and starting to problematize these ideas of women-only coach education. So where was that seed sown for you both, and what inspired you to start writing about it, and how has that maybe led to you putting this program together?
I think personally, it started with a bit of a bugbear. Things tend to do that with me. Some frustration, some curiosity. I was becoming increasingly aware that certain governing bodies were running women-only coach education. And for me, at the time, I had some concerns around what was actually being delivered on these programs and whether these programs were actually necessary in their current format. So when I say women-only coach education programs, I am referring to ones that are focused on developing the athlete as opposed to developing the coach. Very different to the program that we are running with the WRU and other organisations at the moment. So more and more of these women-only coach education courses were coming out. So I was a bit concerned. I knew of literature in the area that almost a decade ago had been quite critical of such approaches, but there was almost a resurgence of these. I was also concerned that many of our students and some of my coaching peers at the time at the club were being encouraged to go on these courses without question, and without considering the implications for them and their development. So a bit of a bee in my bonnet, if I'm totally honest. So yeah, started to think about this around about the first lockdown, and as I have a tendency to do, thought about it, got a few ideas down, parked it, left it alone for a long time. Things get in the way, don't they? And had conversations with Sofia and Robin about it, and I think as a starting point, they validated my ideas. I just wasn't sure if I was right or my argument had any weight to it. And yeah, we worked together and despite me being hesitant in terms of handing over the work initially, is this good enough? I don't know, as we all do. I'm really pleased I shared that with Robin and Sofia, because they both were able to move the work into a much stronger place, and help me develop it in the sense of, well, have you thought about this? Linking it to wider social theory and really kind of shifting it on. So it was great to get them on board.
I guess at the same time that Kerry's writing these ideas on and experiences, probably not very good experiences. Well, the paper's out, so we know they're not very good experiences around coach education. And you're putting down these first thoughts in. Robin and Christian and I are going, hey, we're going to deliver a women-only coach education course. We're developing a women-only program. So in doing so, we knew there were some contradictory ideas in many ways, that we agree with that and we're arguing against it, but also there's the scope to do this. So how do we make it relevant? How do we, what are the issues we have with current women-only courses? And this is our first session, isn't it? It starts with, if the issue is about male-dominated spaces, why have you invited us into the room, isn't it? And why is there a photographer? I know we touch upon this with Kat on the first podcast, day one, and everyone in the room is going, what are we doing here then?
I think it was at a time on it where the WRU was getting bad press, right? So I mean, shock happening again. Nothing's changed, but I think it felt like a tick box, and it felt like it was
Fair
putting
enough.
a plaster over something that was a much bigger issue than what they were willing to accept. So, although on the other side, flip side, like for me, I'm going to take every opportunity that is a tick. I'm still going to do it. I just think that like we walked in the room and it was all bells and whistles, and then and as the program progressed, for me, I saw the WRU felt like less and less interest in it. So in the first day, we had the representative there and the photographer, and it was going to be like, yes, this is the next group of female high performance coaches, and then that was it then, because they got the media piece, and they could put that out to say no, we're not like with the allegations of sexism and whatever. It's like, but look at what we're doing. So yeah, I think there's probably some bits around it, and especially in that first session. Plus, I was heavily pregnant and hormonal, so I thought, oh, what have you dragged me into?
So was I, though.
Yeah, true. True.
So we had that to counterbalance each other. But I think that first day, I think I'm going to remember that first day for a really long time, because it was so interesting to have this opportunity in a beautiful space we were in, to have this. I couldn't remember the last time that I had a room with 12 women coaches. You so rarely get that. So we really felt the pressure that this needs to be good, and it needs to be significant, but also it needs to serve the coaches who are there. So there's a degree of open-endedness to it. That we've got things that we want to present, but really this needs to be a discussion. It needs to be about self-development. So how do we help them? We think we know, but also there was a degree that we always get a lot with coaches, that this sounds very academic. And so we also have that barrier, didn't we? And their initial reaction of, so after we present the aims and objectives, and they go, so this is about us then. You're not going to tell us how to become high performance coaches? And our reply to that was linked with what Kerry has just presented, that it's not a mainstream course, because otherwise why would we not have everyone in the room? Why is this for women? What are we targeting? That's what we presented to everyone. And they're kind of looking around the room going, I'm not sure about this.
And I think just building on that is the issue that I originally took, and the conversations we originally had weren't necessarily with female only or women only spaces. It was how those spaces were being used. So a great deal of planning went into making sure that this program was actually useful. And I think, Lisa's just highlighted it there, that the group that we were working with could see straight through if this was a tokenistic kind of tick box, and it was great that we were already starting at those levels.
Absolutely.
And that level of criticality, which, has moved on so much.
Yeah. I do think it's probably important we refer back to a conversation we were having in a reading group. So Kerry presented the paper to the sport coaching research group a week or two ago, and someone took note of just how long it's taken to sort of formulate and develop these ideas into what's now been published, to get the meaning behind it, the attention behind it right. Are you happy to share a little bit about how that process has been for you, and Sofia, for you as well? Because like you said, we started thinking about this pre-pandemic. It's published 2024. That's a long old time to, for one paper, but that's, I guess, kind of the reality for a lot of other people working in that space.
I mean, it could just be me and typically how slow I am. But yeah, it started in 2020, I think it was, just before the pandemic. And as I said, is I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my concerns were. I knew kind of what the broad kind of focus of the paper would be. But beyond that, I was relatively new to the area. It was new ground for us. So it took 4 years to get it published. And I think some of that I can attribute to the fact that I needed to make sure that what I was trying to write, what I was trying to say was accurate. And so to some degree, I believe I was on a bit of catch up. This is a new area for me. I hadn't written specifically about gender in sports coaching. So you can say that some of that had an impact. Again, I think as with most people who are doing research, you do tend to sit on it. You do tend to worry about whether it's good enough. There's a reluctance to share, even though that sharing brings the work on so much. So yeah, I'm sat in my little office makeshift bedroom type thing, going round in circles for a long time before I finally kind of plucked up the courage to bring these guys on board. And that was brilliant, and that really moved it on. In terms of the actual process of getting it in or getting it published, like most articles, they're never accepted on the first go. So there's some toing and throwing with that, and that was a really valuable experience, because whilst it's never nice to be told that, well, your work's not at the standard yet. There's also a real positive in getting feedback off other people and different perspectives. And this is a North American journal, so getting that insight as well. So yeah, I think it did take a long time. But this is also, it's a statement piece, and we needed to make sure that statement was accurate. But also, what I've tried to do is not completely write off these programs. There are strengths to them. I get the security argument. I get the safety argument. I get that female coaches may feel more comfortable in these environments. So it's important that we saw both sides to it, and I didn't just come in and completely ruin these courses. So that was largely it. And of course, we worked together, we collaborated, and making sure that each one of us has got the space to get to grips with this. So we were consistent in our approach.
Absolutely. So that particular paper there that we're referring to is Alienation, Othering and Reconstituting an Alternative Future for Women's Coach Education. So we'll make sure that we put a link to that in the podcast description. Lisa, back to you. I'm wondering, do you share any of Kerry's sort of frustrations about what coach education has been like for women? Have these sorts of issues impacted you in the past with your experiences, or have you got a slightly different set of experiences and perspectives?
Probably slightly different, actually. So I've aside from this course, I've never been on a female-only course, which has probably skewed it a little bit, because I really like this course, or this program that we're doing. So I'm like, well, why wouldn't we want to do female-only stuff? But I completely get what you're saying. I guess my experiences on like coaching certificate courses, the lower sort of the first couple of levels, they weren't good experiences. I was very often I think I was the only female in the room. I can't really remember, it's a while ago now, but like in that, I was not listened to, I was dismissed, I was doing all those things that, like, as females, like, we know. So to go into a female only space has actually been a really positive experience for me. But I also have never been on a like level 2 female only course.
You've spoken a little bit about the fact that even the lower levels, the level 1s, level 2s, even the content is going to be dramatically different between those versus what you've now been presented with on this particular program. And that speaks a little bit to what you've written about in the paper, that it's not necessarily about just having women only coach education courses, which are then just the spitting image of the generic programs that are run, but actually looking at content that is going to be useful, helpful for women in this particular context of high performance, but coaching generally.
It's making sure that, as I said, is that, and I guess if I was going to point fingers, I'm not pointing fingers, but it's at the courses that are, carbon copies in terms of content, in terms of the way that they're delivered, of mainstream courses. And we see quite a lot of it in football. And as I said, I see some strength and some positives in terms of it being the solidarity argument, the safe space argument, but these are not really the discussions that are being had. These are tech tac and whatever else focused. So yeah, it was more directed at that than what we've managed to develop and grow with the WRU.
I think the women only element of it was something that we really had to think carefully about, because in many ways we disagreed with it. We were delivering something, we were prepping ourselves to deliver something that we took issue with. We felt that within the context, we needed to start that way, and there was the scope to do so. Mm-hmm. We were being asked to deliver this. And so we wanted to get the aims and objectives really right with this. And I'm sure we'll go into the content then. We needed to get the content, what we're going to deliver, what we wanted, the purpose, intention, etc. of it. But this element of we're going to have a group, a room full of women. We know probably where we're going to start. We expect it. We're all going to have a big rant. Mm. And the paper touches upon that. I think it's a really big part of the paper, and probably one of the reasons also it took long to write it, even though I actually think starting an idea in 2020, getting it published by 2023 or submitted by 2023, it's pretty good in my book. Anyway, but that's maybe a discussion for a different session. But getting this idea of getting it right, what do we then develop? What's the advantage of having a room with women? Thinking that we don't need to fix them, right? That's a big part of the paper's argument. It's not necessarily our argument. It's been written about before. Hmm. So we know we also need to work with others on this. But that opportunity sometimes is hard. Hmm. And there's also scope, we think, to work from it from inside. So we also need to conduct change. So whilst we were interviewing the coaches before the program, we talked about this willingness for change. And of course, everyone is like, yeah, 100%. Don't know exactly what you mean with it, but 100% I'm on board. And we wanted to highlight this. Look, there won't be any coaching methods in it. And I don't think anyone heard us, because day one, everyone expected that. So what we're doing, it's great to look around, all the women, a lot of women, we're not used to this, but what do we do with it? And that's also been something that we keep having this discussion, don't we, Lisa, about when next with this? Is the next step integration? And you go, well, we're going to invite people, others, into these discussions that we're having. We're going to invite decision makers, however their gender, into these discussions. And we keep going back and forth, don't we? Is that a good idea?
I don't know.
I think it's a really interesting one. Really interesting.
It is. I guess my frustration is, and probably I wasn't even aware of it till being on this program, right? That it's exhausting. It's exhausting having to battle people all the time and help get them to see it from your perspective, and all the little things that they're not even aware of that they're doing, and the effect that it has on that group, whatever, females, whatever. So it's exhausting. And I've come home from our courses, and I've had to have a nap, because
Me too.
We're talking about really challenging things, and I think that some of the stuff I've learned, the awareness stuff, that I'm now hyper aware of everything, and that's exhausting in itself. And now I need to go and challenge other people, and I get frustrated, and I think, why is it my responsibility why is that my responsibility? And it that's tiring, and it's hard, but if we don't do it, then who does? So I feel like it's a double-edged sword there. And also, as females, regardless, depending on what environment we're in, us challenging can be consequences to it as well. And that's also tough. You have to be willing to take on those consequences, which could be for some people losing their job or like, and I think that's tough.
Yeah,
and
difficult.
I think here we are starting this program with, we know where we're at the end of the 2 years. The aim is not separation, it's not segregation. We're really looking for integration. We write about it. Robin and I, particularly in the beginning, are very confident about this, that's what we're aiming for. And I'm not saying we've given up on it, but by any means, but I think we've learned a lot working with this group, and we've had this discussion a few times before. And I think the first time we had this openly, and I think, Lisa, you've raised it, why is it my responsibility? Why should I teach anyone else about this? They'll learn. They should learn about it. And it's such a fair point that I don't think we expected. We were ready because as we're going, we're collecting data. The coaches have been so generous with their time and allowing us to learn from this experience, giving up their time for focus groups with us, etc., doing observations, collecting notes. And as I said, we were ready to argue for integration. And we still want that, but how we do it, I think we're not there yet. I think different sports might have different contexts as well, but I think this is a really important and interesting point that I think we find in the literature the importance of integration and possibly not working within women-only groups, as we've argued for, but how we do that, we don't have enough information about this. And we're learning a lot from these positions that, well, you've created a safe space here, and now you want to take it away. I know a lot of the coaches within our group have been invited to go and speak at level 3 and level 4, right, to provide examples of their struggles. Well, that's great, but that is sharing experiences. But I completely agree with Lisa now. I think I have a different vision of what I had when we started 2 years ago about our role in it as well, and how fair it is to say, well, yeah, maybe it is not your responsibility, or not just, I'll correct that. I don't think it is your responsibility. I think we can change the environments we're in, but there is quite a focus on we have to change the narratives just for ourselves. And these safe groups, we might need to maintain them.
I think there's also a bit in there as well about like what that integration looks like. Like I don't, let's take this with a pinch of salt. I'd be expected to be in that environment and share my experiences and educate other people. But when they say something stupid back, I've got to, do you know what I mean? I've got to walk them through where they should be. And I just think like, I think that's where I get frustrated, is how do I challenge that in a way that's going to have a positive outcome rather than saying, do one.
I guess the way we see it, that's our role in facilitating that.
Excellent.
As coach educators, and not necessarily putting the onus on the coaches on having to do that. And it is the institution's responsibility to do that.
And I think, and I really get what Lisa's saying there. I think there's some real tensions and complexities. It's not just a case of, right, we're ready, off we go, open it up. I think that's ultimately the long, that's the ideal, that we're having these conversations in mainstream kind of mixed environments, but we're not there yet. And as Lisa's just said, is and the literature argues this as well, this is hard work, this is emotional work, it's tiring work, and I'm not surprised they're exhausting. But the other side of that is, well, it's always going to be on this group if we don't get this stuff or get others around the table at some point. So it's a tough one, and I think we're we're not there yet. We
No.
will continue as we have been, and I think there's so much to take from this experience and this opportunity, and get to work with people like Lisa, who are, for me, unsung heroes. I think you're listening. I wasn't aware of half of that stuff. And that aside from kind of the content, it's about them, and it's about the people and how they've moved forward, and as a result move the program on. It's not about us.
Yeah. So we're sort of tiptoeing a little bit into like what the experiences of the program have therefore been like. So Lisa, how about you kick us off? Just broadly speaking, what's the experience of that program been like for you, aside from being very tiring and requiring naps after some of the workshops?
Naps and
things?
snacks.
Yeah.
Lots of snacks.
Yeah, good job they were residential then. How do you sum it up? Probably like it's a bit of a roller coaster, right? I've laughed, I've cried, I've got angry in that room. Like I really have been through a whole journey. I think for me, like, I am a simple person. I enjoy going out and coaching rugby, and then, do you know what I mean? Like the fun and games that comes with winning and losing and all the rest of it. And then all of a sudden, I've become aware of all these things that have always been happening around me, but now I've got a name for them, and now I can see them. And when you can see them, you can't unsee them, right? So all of a sudden, like, like we talked about, like our political environments. We talked about honesty, which started a whole debate of what that should look like. We've talked about like using humor, and like that. I'm someone who does that. So understanding like, that's why I do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've just had all this like learning, and like a roller coaster. I can't. But now I'm a lot more tired because I see everything. So yes, I still need naps and things like that. But I think personally, I'm getting better at managing my political environment because I understand it. I never even saw it before, and all of a sudden, like, and that's just one example, right? Like,
yeah, perfect. I can kind of empathize, I think, a little bit with the tiredness and stuff we were talking before when we were getting a coffee about what it's like on the taught doctorate, and I guess it's been the same for me I've been on a Sport Wales coach developer program, and that's been the same, of long days of similar content. And I think it's the reason I find it so tiring, so difficult, is because it's very intellectually stimulating, but it's also so challenging at the same time. But I think what makes it so challenging is that you're all of a sudden almost doubting all of that stuff you used to do before, and it's really challenging your assumptions and your values and your beliefs about what good coaching looks like or what good coach development looks like. And so when you're speaking about, all these things now, all of a sudden I can see them, that's probably quite a difficult scenario to be in. But it's not pushed you away from the program. You've kept going with it. So, what are the benefits that are really coming out of it from you as a result now of having that knowledge or having those things to think with?
What's the box? What's it called? Pandora's box. Like, yeah. I feel like that's been opened, and now I've got this little. I've been fed these little bits of change, and all, seeing things differently, and then reflecting, asking me to reflect. That's hard, but so all that stuff. I don't want to close the box. I feel like I can see more things a bit in stronger colors now. All that type of thing. I think that I'm not only a better coach for it, but a better person as well. I think there's, that sport isn't separate from life. I think that understanding that, I don't know what I've said there, right? But I've just waffled. But it's a
sounded great.
Okay, we'll take it. I've really enjoyed the program, I think, and it has challenged me 100%. Like I wasn't thinking things before, and I've said things that I've been challenged by others in the room, and I've also said things where we've had shared experiences in the room, which has been super positive for me, going through sort of like maternity stuff and what that looks like, and my return from maternity after somebody else was sort of like looking after the program while I was off. Like there's loads in there. How am I supposed to pick one?
If you don't need a nap afterwards, is it even worth it? But in all seriousness, it's not designed to be difficult, but is designed to be challenging, because it's about self. You've described it really, really well, that it's about who you are rather than what you do or how you do it, that sits elsewhere, we think, in coach education. This is about self-development. In this particular case, about women in male-dominated spaces, but it's always been about self-development. Where do we go? Increased awareness of the things around us so we can play with our agency. So we can recognize the structures that are around us, which ones are worth dealing with. Where am I going to invest my time? And I think in many ways, the time that we've had with these coaches, that it's rare that you are given the opportunity to work with someone for 2 years and now even over that time, because as far as we know, the partnership will continue. And so in that sense, kudos to the WRU who have allowed us to do this and recognize the importance of having this time to learn, but essentially to reflect, because it's not just the work we do in the residentials, being able to go away and play with these ideas. And you don't just go, oh, yes, micropolitics, that's great, I'm just going to apply it. It's to think with, and it's transformative, and hence the need for naps. We also need naps afterwards. It's exhausting because we're facilitating, but also we're learning as we go. It's a group thing.
Yeah.
It's part of why social learning is so impactful, because we're doing it together. We're having these discussions. Kerry and I are sharing our experiences as women in academia, women in sport, women in coaching. So we're all working together. We're using these theoretical frameworks to better understand ourselves, not, here's the theory and go and play with it.
I suppose that's one of the, I don't want to call it a secret ingredient, but it's definitely something that you're trying to make a case for in the paper, is let's have a look at some of these sociological themes that coaches can actually put to use and think with in order to better the situations they find themselves in. And that's particularly important. Becoming hyper aware, I suppose, of the politics of the people in the group, etc. Has that given you, I don't want to call it a tool, but has it given you the sort of the knowledge to go, right, I can influence this person in this way to get what I feel is best for them out of it? Is it given you that sort of thinking?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've taken what we've talked about and what we've learned, and it hasn't always worked out right. Like it hasn't gone, well, I'm going to use that in this situation. It doesn't always work like that, and I think that was probably a learning away from the program as well for me. It was that now I've got this knowledge, I'm trying to use it, but am I using? Do you know what I mean? Like, do I understand what I'm trying to get out of? The social, the snail and the whale. That's the social exchange one, is it? Snail and the whale. Probably. Yeah. Okay. But like, understanding that and, seeing a bigger picture sometimes. I think, like, for me, I probably, and this was me being blissfully unaware, look in that sort of like, this is my bubble and all the things in my bubble, but now I'm aware of what's outside the bubble, I guess. And yeah.
Also, it's, we've noticed, we've seen definitely an increase in awareness with the coaches in the room. But that's also resulted in a different use of language, which we're very pleased about, because that's what we were hoping to achieve, weren't we?
Yeah, and I think Lisa mentioned it earlier. It's finding the words, or having the words, having the language to maybe challenge things or call things out. Whereas I think previously, when you're within coaching, you're in leadership, you're within academia, some things are said, or you experience certain things that don't sit well with you, and they make you uncomfortable, and you know that they're not right, but you can't quite put your finger on it until you have that, not necessarily a label as such, but you're able to identify exactly what it is. And I think that's been something that we've both seen in the group, and it's just, the conversations that we're having are really sophisticated conversations, and without kind of, selling the group short in terms of where they started, but there has been a real difference in terms of the level of conversation and the areas that we're able to go as a result of us. Oh yeah, that's what you mean. And you know, being able to identify different microaggressions, invalidations, those sorts of things. Oh, that's not on. That is that over there. That's happening there. So as Lisa's working in her environment, she's able to, you know, read that landscape, but also read the individuals in front of them, and understand, I know what you're doing here. And I think that's a powerful thing.
And this is also probably our next paper. But into looking at the differences in the language used, because it's not to say that now the coaches, you know, they act completely different, but it's a better understanding of what they were already doing. And Lisa had alluded before to one of our first discussions about honesty. We were talking about our coaching philosophies and who we are as coaches, and honesty came up a lot. I'm very transparent. I'm very honest as a coach. And we try to, as the paper alludes to deconstruct that first, right? So what do you mean with honesty? How does it look like? So do you say these to people? Well, not exactly that way. And I think we went from the way that coaches were discussing their experiences and what they're about, from, just as an example, being very honest, very transparent. That's what they were about, to people who influence, that create allies, that look at the structures and systems. And it's not, the aim is not changing the language, but is giving a language that allows us to better understand what's happening there. And that has been a change that we've seen, and that we're very, very pleased about, because it allows them to better read the landscape around us. And we're having discussions about landscape, aren't we now? And buying in, and microaggressions, and managing the relationships rather than transparent relationships necessarily. You know, and what that means, that with those kind of comments, it means that women are this then, even though that's not being said. So going through those kind of experiences and having this language to go, right, so it's not the aggression, it's not the comment, is then the invalidation of. So what's next after that?
I think there's definitely been, for me, like a bit of an awakening around like being grateful. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful that I am in a full-time coaching role, but like that isn't something I should be grateful for. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there was a bit of an awakening bit around that, and then also like managing up. Like, we've heard people say it before, and I'm like, yeah, be nice to your manager and whatever. But that isn't really what it meant until I fully understood. And again, it's that like the layers of it as well. Oh, I didn't even think about that before. So there's so many parts to this. Yeah.
Are you? Have you noticed the change in yourself that Kerry and Sofia are sort of referring to there? Have you noticed the change in your language, or the change in the way that you even just perceive certain things, or the way that you work with particular individuals?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, political landscape is not something I've ever said before going on the programme. So yeah, definitely. I'm picking on that one because I think I use it quite often. I think I'm probably not as confident as where I'd like to be in terms of being able to challenge and change. But I think that the fact that I'm aware of it and, you know, understanding my own long game and like where I want to go is, you know, probably something I need to do a little bit of work on so that I can better manage my political landscape. So I think I've definitely got more language. Yeah. Than I didn't know what agency was before I went on and that was day one. That was probably when I needed a nap the most.
I think it's also a rethinking of language. And I can remember on one of the workshops me talking about manipulation. Yeah. I don't manipulate. I don't do this. And now it's manipulate, but in a positive way. Yeah. So it's there, but it's almost reinterpreting you know, what we're saying, and I think there's some of that going on as well.
It's and I think when you reclaim that sort of idea of manipulating, it's because you want to get something very particular.
Yeah.
I think lots of us have got goals and things, but again, it's another challenging process to think, right, who do I want to be as a coach? What do I want to be known for? Where do I want to be in 3 years, 5 years?
A giant game of chess is what it is, and you've got to try and think 3 moves ahead. I'm no chess master, mate, so I really struggle with that long term. Where do I want to get to? I'm probably a bit reactive to the moment sometimes, but I think this program has brought an awareness to it. I'm still not sure I know how to manage it properly, but 100%.
It's so complicated, isn't it? I mean, it's never going to be something that's smooth and seamless. I mean, we do it all the time. I mean, if I'm thinking about the coaches that I'm working with a couple in men's rugby environment, well, I want them to sort of coach and behave and think a very particular way, but I'm not really from a rugby environment. I've got a bit of a history in it from years and years ago. I can kind of lean on that a little bit. I can drop a couple of names. I mean, I'll put my head above the parapet here. When we were grabbing a cup of tea and coffee, I'm talking about the fact that I used to play rugby at Lichfield, and there's a couple of the girls that played at Lichfield that Lisa has played with. Well, now all of a sudden, we've got a bit of common ground, and so now we're friends, and now it makes the podcast environment a little bit more friendly.
You manipulated me? Is that what happened?
Well, yeah, I guess that's what we'd say, isn't it? You're thinking about what is it that I want to get from this particular exchange or this particular course, program, conversation, interaction, and then you act out a particular way in order to get it. And some people would see that as being quite manipulative, but it then becomes a real tussle in your mind of, should I be doing this? Where's the lines on morality and and ethics and things like that? But that's part of the fun of this work, I think, particularly when you've got the sociological lenses and ideas coming through it, and rather than just technical, tactical, these are your pods, these are the it's you can go so much further with that stuff, can't you?
Yeah, and I think for us it's recognizing how challenging, how interesting that stuff, and how beneficial, understanding influence, understanding manipulation, if we're going to call it that. We spoke about things like Machiavellian ideas, the what is it, the fox and the, I can't remember, the fox and the lion, but also making sure that we don't overlook the obvious. This stuff is difficult as it is. It's particularly difficult when you come from a position of deficit, or when you typically, because of the way things are and the stereotypes, the status quo, whatever you want to call it, you start with a lack of perhaps respect or credibility, and that makes it really hard to influence. So, not saying that they've got a lack, but the perceptions related to that. So it was certainly with the political stuff, it was understanding that first, and that you're not at fault here. This is the way things are. In kind of, these are wider social issues, but what can we focus on then? What can we draw on in terms of social theory that might enable us to better understand that and also do something about it? And that was really important, I think, for all of us. Is right. Okay, what we don't want is this to turn into just a rant and an echo chamber. There needs to be some action. There needs to be some reflection forward with it. What are we going to do with this information?
I think it also addresses, and I think you can hear it through Lisa's experiences in many ways, it addresses that divide of theory and practice in many ways. And I know you've had, did you have Robin and Charlie coming in to speak in one of the episodes? I think it's a really good example of this in practice. And you can hear, I'm probably repeating myself here, sorry, but you can hear Leanne Norman's work on microaggressions, microinvalidations. You've got probably Paul Partrak's micropolitical landscape agenda here. We got so much of Robin's work around the complexity of coaching and so much more. We got work that we've done around power and influence and how we learn. And I'm really selling short how many theories and academic work that is the foundation for all that we've presented. But that's, I don't think that's how it then comes through. And we haven't in any way tried to simplify this as it's been argued before. For coaches, you have to simplify. You can't be academic. It's extremely academic what we've presented, and we've based it upon so many people's work. And I know you've had members of CRIC in the podcast before. So many of their work has been presented in this course. It's extremely academic, and I think, Lisa, you might have been an example of someone that initially would have gone, I don't want to, if it's theory and long words, I don't want to engage with it. Yeah. And instead you have Lisa sitting there that has engaged with it immensely. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in being there if I'm not going to engage with it. But I agree. I think there's, I think like the academic bit, like it is important. And yes, we might have to talk around lived examples to be able to fully understand the academic stuff that's being presented. But I think, like, you're right. Let's not dumb it down. Let's, do you know what I mean? Like it. But I think the biggest bit for me was the bit around the lived examples of being able to, what does that look like in practice? What are these things in practice? So having that, and I think some of the guest speakers as well that came in, hearing their examples and then being able to put that academic learning that we've done into I recognize that as something. So yeah,
because the whole thing is academic.
Yeah. But
right? There's not a this is about practice and this is about the theory. It's the social theory allows us to understand our experiences. Yeah. So it's all about practice. None of it is about theory. Yeah. Or maybe all of it is about theory. And then all of it is also about practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that, there's not necessarily a divide. There's there to, the frameworks are there to allow us to better understand what we're experiencing. And then also to reflect upon it. So the theory just there constantly, just doesn't necessarily feel that traditional way of doing theory. Yeah. Because we're experiencing it rather than learning about it and then go and apply it. It's just, this is what we're already doing, isn't it?
Yeah. Those lived experiences are key, like you say, just initially for sense making. But if you're able to take something that's academic, I'm doing air quotes there for people that are just listening, not watching on YouTube, something that's academic, and you can use that as an example of that thing, that lived experience can function as an example, well, then the theory is just practice, right? And so this is what Charlie, Robin and Geth have been writing about in that paper. So I think season 2 or season 3, maybe, that scholarship practitioner divide, trying to glaze over that a little bit, call it artificial. I guess we shouldn't be looking at these sociological ideas as being any different to a tactic you might put into play with your team. It's an idea through which you see performance. It just happens to be that probably when we're talking about performance, it's more interaction between people rather than necessarily the game itself. I think the other thing, though, and the challenging bit about lived theory is that when you're always thinking backwards to those lived examples, you quite often think about, well, this is what I'm already doing. So I'm already doing this. You've just given me language. But this is about more than that if we're talking about change, isn't it? It's about how can I actually change my practice in order to be more reminiscent of the theory rather than try and twist and, do some mental gymnastics to make the theory just look like my practice already is, if you like. And that, I think, is the really difficult bit, is the thinking forwards and actually trying to get change from these ideas rather than just going, well, I already do that. Thanks for the label for it, if you like. But it is nice to see, of course, language changing in people, using different ideas. Because I always think for me, that's the first bit of evidence that some change and some kind of development is happening in coaches.
I think out of there is the link that we've tried to make with agency. And hence, I guess, the element of reconstruction as well. That, well, now you understand it by. It's if we understand the structures around us, then let's now explore the concept of agency. So what is it within this structure that we're already doing? What can we do better now that we better understand it? How can we be more effective at it, if you want to use that word? I'm not 100% sure I do. But anyway, you know what I mean. How can we move those structures? Where is it possible to? Where do I want to invest my energy? Big part of it was around social exchange theory and thinking about how we invest energy, ourselves, what we want to, what we not, what we might need to compromise to get somewhere. So I think those those are examples of, I think, concepts that allow us to move forward, as well as scaffolding. We had Gethin coming in, also talking about that and how we scaffold the environments we're in. But also I've heard a lot of coaches talking about now of, I'm orchestrating this. And orchestration, I think, has been a good example also of, so what do we do? And what is next?
Has that been something that's kind of shone through your practice quite a lot, Lisa?
Yes. Yes. I think, like, I've got a lot of theory now, or not. Well, I'm sure there's a lot more out there, but I've got some good theory now to like take on and use and utilize. I don't think that I necessarily am that confident in myself. In I'm being very honest, but that confident in using some of those things to my advantage yet, and really understand. So I understand the theory now, but how do I really get what I want out of situations? Is like I'm still learning with that part. Still,
of course. Yeah. This is the bit where one of you jumps in and say, "Are you really being honest? Are you sure you're being honest?"
I would say you're selling yourself short.
Yeah.
Lisa's been in an amazing journey here, I think. But I won't go.
Yeah, don't make me cry again. Bloody hell.
Good crying, obviously.
It
Good
is,
crying.
it's transformational. So yes, we've had a lot of emotions, all of us, in the program, and I think that speaks about how worth it is, how well worth it is to engage in these kind of conversations, because they are transformational. And yes, we'll have tears, we'll have laugh, because we're living. And so
and just go back to Lisa's point, and she is selling herself short as she usually does, but it takes time. You don't just get this information and then go and do something with it. There needs to be sense making on a personal level, seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I think you're not the only person that okay, I've got this, but I haven't quite got it. That really takes time, and it's not a case of just applying this theory to practice. It's about actualizing it. It's about bringing it to life. It's about it working for you. And I think, and I just want to highlight the point is that we haven't had to dumb it down. We wouldn't dumb it down. This is intellectual work, and these are complex ideas, but there isn't any need to dumb it down, and that would be again a disservice to the people on the program, because these are brilliant people, brilliant coaches, brilliant human beings that can cope with that challenge.
Lisa's touched upon something there that I guess because of the literature and the experiences of women in working environments, male-dominated working environments especially, but there's a lot of information out there on how one of the barriers is women lacking confidence. And so something that we are asked often is, one of the aims has to be to increase women's confidence, right? Now you can interpret that in many ways, confidence of what? And so we've certainly, I think, played with what we meant with confidence. But I think that has been something that has been shared with or by the different coaches in the program, that I feel more confident in certain aspects of, and it's not necessarily in coaching, but I feel a bit more confident to go for opportunities now. And I think there's something there around, but Lisa can probably speak about this better than I can, around a safety in the group, of being able to go back to the group and share experience. Should I not? And it's not just a work network, is it? In many ways, is a bit of a cheerleading group of, yes, you should go for it. You would be great at it. But I think there is an increased sense of confidence because you better understand. Therefore, you feel more secure in your readings of what's going around you, and therefore you can deal better with.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have had increased confidence, and I know I use humor in a self-deprecating sort of protective way, which I mean I learned on the course as well. I definitely have more confidence, and I have more confidence in understanding the manipulations that are happening around me as well, and what people are trying to get out of me. I really enjoy that the group that we were sort of working with, and I've played internationally with a lot of those girls, but if it wasn't for this group, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to share the experiences that we have had together. And I mentioned earlier about the mat leave. That's just one part of it. In that as well, there's also like a group of strong women that I admire and that I look up to, and then turn around and cheerleading me to go for these opportunities and to challenge these things. So I think like that's huge, and they're women that I respect and I think are strong women. And like you've had Kat on the pod, I think she's probably one of the strongest, most sort of like direct in the group there, and like being able to challenge her in a safe space and to have a really good conversation where both of our sides are seen, and we can still disagree in the end if that's what it comes to, but like nothing's damaged with it as well. I think those things are really important, because sometimes when you challenge people, so it can be like really like negative and take it a bit personally. But I think that this program has created a space where actually we can challenge each other and cheer each other on, and also like create confidence in what we're saying and like our ideas that we're putting forward. So yeah.
Great. So just before we get into our ranty bit, favourite bit of the pod, programme's coming to an end.
Wait, that wasn't it? I don't know.
Programme's coming to an end. What are you going to miss about it, and what's next for you?
What's next? So the WRU have set up a sort of like continued learning women in coaching thing called Accelerate, which I think is being this program is sort of being absorbed into the Accelerate umbrella. So that is something I'm going to engage with, and they're also bringing out a coach recognition basically like a sort of, well, I can't think of a better way to explain it, but a recognition badge for coaches who are in high performance and who are also taking part in this learning that isn't technical and tactical, and like being better people, better understanding their environments, that type of thing. So I'm going to continue with that. I'm gutted that the program's ending, because there's some, like, I've got loads out of it, and I'm sure that the other girls on there have as well. I think I am, from where we started on my rant, like at the beginning of the program, and being like, why is it my responsibility? I think I am now taking more responsibility and trying to challenge in the areas where I can. And I don't know if privilege is the right word, but I'm in a privileged position to be a full-time coach, right? And I am in spaces that other people aren't in. So I do feel a duty of like responsibility, a bit of responsibility to try and make that better and to get people more seats at the table, basically. So I think there's a lot there. Got a big to-do list.
It's good. It's good. And for you two, for Sofia, Kerry, what's next?
Just following up on that first, I think exactly what Lisa said there is kind of what we tried to highlight in the paper, is about taking a stance, and I'm really pleased to hear that from Lisa, because we had these conversations in terms of you've got to do something, or you're just complicit in it. So it's really nice to hear that. And going forward, I think Sofia's in the best position to describe the number of different things we've got going on at the moment.
Am I now? Well, I think in this particular context and what we've just discussed today, I think there's a really nice narrative there, or at least it feels nice to me.
Yeah.
That we've argued for an alternative way to look into the women-only coach education. Now we've put it in practice. And now we have all this data about what we've experienced. We're right in the middle of analyzing it. So that's probably what we want to get out there next is we've argued for it. We've applied it with this brilliant group of coaches that have allowed us not only to work with them, but also to do research with them. Which you don't.
Wait, what?
You don't.
That was a thing.
She signed consent for this.
I've got the form. Sorry.
But now to look into this data and continue to learn, because I think that is a thing. We're learning as we're going. There's a lot there around this sense of increased confidence, the importance of these safe spaces. I think we can go more in depth into what is it about the safe space exactly. That because we have, I think, a lot of information out there that says the importance of networks, the importance of safe spaces, but we haven't gone in depth and go, what is it about them? So what kind of networks do we need to create? What do you mean with a safe space? Safe in what? Because as Lisa described today, we did challenge coaches. We took them out of comfort zones. That doesn't sound particularly safe.
Oh, it wasn't comfortable.
Exactly. So just to learn more about that, I think it's a really important step about this learning process. We've talked about the increased criticality, but also this questioning. There was a lot of questioning, wasn't it? There was a lot of, don't come into here now, because I know you're going to ask, what do you mean about that word? And that's going to give you...
That, keep your eyes down, be like, don't pick
It's
up
either
my
eyes down or you get eyeballed going, don't even think about coming over here.
Don't. I need lunch first. Don't even come and don't sit next to me and ask me why. Or what do you mean about honesty?
Yeah.
Or any other... So it's... we've got theory around social learning and the questioning and all of this, but writing about what we've experienced linked with developing, which is not just, I don't think this is necessarily about women in coaching. This is about minorities and how to provide support for and how we grow. And then I think, if you ask me what next, I always want to then explore this integration, segregation. What do we do with it? And how do we present this to decision makers?
Good. Exciting. It's already come such a long way. I feel like I'm in such a privileged position to listen to Kat and her experiences sort of midway through the programme, and Lisa, for you to share yours. So I'm really appreciative of you coming in and doing another episode for us. Just before we wrap up then, a little bit of time for challenging some myths in sport coaching. Has anyone got anything for us that they'd like to share? Kerry's normally got a list.
The last time we were here, I brought in I can't remember what it was. It was the how you should coach rugby girls one, and I think we got rid of some of the nonsense on there. I don't have anything current. A few irritations related to. I'm going to go with it. My niece has started playing. She's a very good football player. And I've watched her train a few times, and I'm getting horrified, annoyed, and really kind of trying to hold myself back with the choice of cones, colour-coded cones. So one of my issues at the moment is stop using fluo pink or lilac cones for the girls over there, and then having blue and all the dark colours over here. I know it's something simple, but that came to mind then. I'm just sat there thinking, what am I going to say? But it's these stereotypes that are prevalent and irritating me, and I think Yeah, it's irritating. That's the best I can do. It's not a rugby
It's very
example.
irritating, I
Irritating
think.
because we're trying to do this work, and then it's like, oh, and you must see
But
it and
also
feel it.
very, very hard to get rid of,
Yeah.
isn't it? And I think Kerry and I, and I'm sure Lisa as well, we're very often in spaces where women's sport or female sport is being discussed a lot, and often narratives about it having to be athlete-centered or person-centered, whatever you mean with that. But then eventually and very frequently going back to these pre-assumptions that, well, women prefer this and men prefer that. And that alludes to this othering, this narrative of othering, that it being presented in different ways, that, it's not there anymore, or we understand it. It's not us and them necessarily. Or I take a little bit of an issue with the concept of allies and how it is used. And I think many times it's used to perpetuate this narrative of us and them instead of working together towards something. It's meant in that way, but I think, I guess my rant is against a little bit more of criticality and how a lot of us are still arguing for not having this divide, but then talking about how the women's game is different, or how women prefer something different than men. And then eventually going into, well, as long as we sort out our understanding of menstruation and periods and how cycles affect, and if we say cycles as many times as we can, it demonstrates that we understand the women's game. I'm simplifying this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I take issue with. And even though there's I think Kerry's is a really, really good example on the women's game has moved so much, but we're using pink cones, right? Or I see it a lot with my 3 boys, that something simple as buying Legos, that, there's Lego Friends. It's not Legos for girls, but only on that specific brand that is clearly marketed for girls. Then you get the pinks, then you get the purples, then you get, the animals with long lashes.
Like the Predator and Prey, isn't it? On little girls' t-shirts is all the prey, the bunnies and the soft animals, and then on my little boy's outfits, he's got sharks and dinosaurs and dangerous animals, and I think, well, that's a bit weird.
But still there. And we've talked and talked and talked, and it's been decades of developing or taking issue with these things. And when you take a step back, gosh, there's a lot of work to do.
So much work to do. So much work to do.
Yeah. Sophia said that far better than I did, but just this essentialization that, the pinks, the blues, and I guess the point is from it's even at that age. Why are we doing that? We've moved. I thought we'd moved, but yet that's still happening and reinforcing, as Sophia's just rightly said, the divide, the othering, that lot over there and that lot over there, and frustrating. Even on this campus, you see there's certain, I've noticed some promotional material that is promoting particular women-only initiatives and evenings and those sorts of things. Great. But it's in neon pink and it's purple. I don't have an issue with pink. I don't have an issue with pink, but it's okay. So we're still doing this. We're still.
But it's not being used in the men's space, is it?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I think they've done a good job of ranting away there.
Kerry's the best at it, for sure. Absolutely. Right, thank you again, the three of you, for coming back.
Thank you for
really
having us.
appreciate it. We'll make sure we put a link to the paper in the podcast description, and you'll be back at some point soon, I'm sure, to talk about what's happened next. Big thank you again to all of our sports broadcast team, particularly to Ellie, who's in the booth today helping us out. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. We'll be back very soon with another episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating, like us on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cardiff Met Sports Coaching Hub podcast.
If you enjoyed the episode, leave us a rating and a review on your favourite podcast platform. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe.
If you want to stay up to date with all of the latest work coming out of the Coaching Hub, please follow us on social media. All the relevant links are in the description.
And if you'd like to be featured in an upcoming listener special episode, drop us your questions to coachinghub@cardiffmet.ec.uk.